Living Life Juicy podcast. Conversations with interesting people you should know. Welcome to the Living Life Juicy podcast, where we explore how we can be present and kind as we do great things. I'm your host and guide, John Losey. If you're interested in video resources and insights on how people learn and grow and how groups develop, you can go to the Growing People podcast YouTube channel and blog. We're all part of the Into Wisdom group. You can check it out at intowisdomgroup.com. Be sure to like and comment and subscribe, all that kind of stuff that you do for podcasts. So today we have Janie Jeffries, who's the director of Stowe Heights Challenge Course located in Des Moines, Iowa. She's worked in the nonprofit youth development sector for 15 years and on challenge courses and other outdoor pursuits for almost 20 years. We met through mutual experiential learning friendships, but got to know each other much better over the past few years, helping each other figure out how to facilitate in the virtual world. So I want to welcome Janie here. So welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I love hanging out with you. And like you said, getting to know each other over the last couple of years really started during the pandemic. And I'm so appreciative for the conversations that we've had over that time.
Yeah. And I mean, you always come with great questions and great thoughts. So I always appreciated our interactions. But let's start off with just helping everybody else out there get to know you. And that's, I kind of joke about, I started this podcast because I wanted to be a better listener and ask better questions. And it's turned into an excuse for me to introduce interesting people I know to everybody else, the dozens of people who listen to this. So I want to find out, like, if you're at a party or something and somebody says, "Hey, Janie, what do you do for a living? What do you do?" How do you explain what you do?
It probably changes every day, but I think the baseline is I get to work with people and help them build comfort with each other so that they can do uncomfortable things. And I'm a coach, I'm a referee, I played sports. So I love explaining it that we get to often practice our sports, practice our art, if that's a theater, practice for tests academically, but we don't often get to practice how we want to show up. We know in our mind, we have ideas. We're often asked what are values and character aspects that we want to emulate, and we say them, and under best conditions, maybe live up to them. But I love to work with people and create fun environments, because what I do, I'm a recreation therapist or therapeutic recreation specialist, and I believe in play and for the sake of play, but I also think that it can bring a value that not a lot of people recognize through reflection, through being present, through and building connection with each other, that we can ask questions of how that felt, what we thought, where we were uncomfortable, where we were comfortable, and really build connections to other areas that are really important to us, with the entry point of this is play, and maybe we're more open when we're in a setting we're not highly vested in it being a certain way.
So what I hear is that, so you use fun to help people practice showing up intentionally.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me more about that. What does that mean? What does that really look like?
There's a comfort with play that some people have, and some people that's even a comfort zone to push on. But going back, like, kids have an aspect in how they play. Maybe it's been impacted by the pandemic a little bit when you talk about parallel play for kids younger than 2 years old. It seems like that's gone up in age and development, where maybe through the pandemic we've gone back a little bit, slid back into parallel play, and so helping people play again, loosen up, have fun, and start there. We're just going to play a game. And then I think there's studies that probably show that as we get older and we get into our 20s and further, play isn't as maybe socially accepted, because you're supposed to be an adult, you're supposed to be in the working world, you're supposed to be professional, and maybe professional isn't laughing. And it actually recently I've been teased a lot about the amount that I giggle. And so I do probably take it over a step, and I could probably pull back a little bit on the amount that I giggle, but I just find life being so funny, and the idiosyncrasies that we have about how we interact. So that's the long answer to just play a game and have that shared experience. And when we play together, when we sit down for a game of cards, how much fun that is, and that we've kind of maybe lost a little of that art with all the technology that has been infused into our lives.
So you use play a lot. What is play?
Yeah,
How do you
what is
like, what is
play?
that?
Sorry, my glasses are falling down my nose. Play, the chance to find, because you can play anywhere, right? The chance to slow down. Like we just went, my birthday was over the weekend. And
Happy birthday.
my kids, a common thing that they, as a birthday present to me, is going on a hike outside. And my son commented that he doesn't know what it is, but when we go on those hikes, and it may be the foundational thing that we just infused, because we did a lot of forest play, like forest, I don't know, I can't remember what it's called, but that, for like, being outside, we were just out, I was outside with the kids a lot. And when we walk, we joke around a lot more. We look at the plants, we play with what's in front of us, we find sticks. So it's just kind of being observant, relaxing, and finding the good question, what is play?
Well, one of the
I
things
just
that
feel
when
like
I think
it's
about it,
being present,
yeah,
basically.
it's and as because that's not tough. We talk about play all the time,
Right.
and I happen to think anything can be play or playful. It's
Yes.
more of a
Playful.
mindset of how you step into it.
Right.
And it's a certain mindset where you're allowing things to take place. You're in the moment, you're present, and
Right.
you are going with what's happening and contributing at the same time. It's almost like a
Yes.
dance with the experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was saying, he was commenting, I get along with my siblings so much better when we're outside playing. And it's just, it is a mindset. And to have the opportunity, yeah, it's a mindset. Playfulness
Yeah.
is more.
Yeah, and you and I interact with a lot of people who are really serious about play. And
Yeah,
sometimes
yes.
sometimes that makes it
Yeah.
tough because they're so serious and
Yep.
they would say they have outcomes, others would say they have agendas for the play, and
Yep.
almost holding on to those too tightly so the people don't necessarily, you're creating an opportunity to play, but you're almost strangling the playful experience.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. Yeah. I want people to, so the other thing I say about what I do is just finding, again, connecting with your why again. Why do I want to, um, I'm right now I'm trying on all of the reasons that people engage in play, or they don't, or they're nervous about it. And so I'm thinking about all of the people that are nervous to just relax and um and be present with the people around them,
Yeah.
and laugh and try something new that they might look I think people get concerned about looking foolish. I know I do. I say that, and I know every day I am concerned about what other people think about me. But if we can get into that area where we are laughing with each other, that's another form of play. And that's important to me. I was working with I've been working with youth over the last couple of weeks with seventh graders, and we do a game where you step in the middle and you say, "This is me. This is my name. My name's Janie, and you are like me if." It's a very common game, male call. You can call many names, but you're basically stepping into a circle, saying who you are and saying something that's true about you. And that's a game. And yet it's so intimidating because we are so geared towards being liked with social media and other, that we're so focused on external, on whether we're okay and who we are is okay. That is pretty intimidating say, I like blue.
I like how Tom Leahy's kind of reframing how facilitators can think about comfort zones and saying that
Yeah.
people are stepping in, like when they arrive at our courses, they are outside their comfort zone.
Yes.
We don't have to take them outside of it.
Right.
We need to meet them where they're at and
Right.
help them choose the encounter.
Right.
I like, when I do trust, I'll do a trust sequence, but I always get a trust fall doesn't really teach people about trust. It creates a
Right.
great metaphor around trust.
Right.
But we start talking about, oh, I worked with a guy who was former military, and we were doing staff training, and we did a trust fall. And sometimes the most dangerous thing are facilitators when they don't have any clients. And they were like, they're doing trust falls and throwing themselves off different things. And he turns around and he says, just because I do this doesn't mean I trust you. I know that you'd be too embarrassed to drop me. And
Yeah.
he just put it all in line right there, and it's total true. So we
Yeah.
started doing activities where we would talk about different areas where, yeah, I can trust you with my body, but can I trust you with my reputation?
Yes. Yes.
And so improv activities are wonderful at. And
Yeah.
at the end of all these, physical trust stuff, I'll put them into an improv activity like the machine, where they have to step in the middle and make with kids, you got to distinguish a non-vulgar
Right.
repetitive motion and sound. And then
Right.
they everybody needs to step in and add to that machine.
Yes.
And that is
So
one,
long. I love that.
especially with it. Kids have a blast with it. Adults, it's the most challenging thing. And then like we do it once, there's some people who run in, there's other people who are,
No,
then I
I'm not.
say challenges. If you were the first one in, I want you to be one of the last. If you were last, I want you to step in early and really challenge them. Once
Yes.
you do it
Yeah.
once, there's a certain comfort level.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Just being able to play on that level, but also respecting that you're right. People arrive uncomfortable. And so we don't have to push that at all. I'm trying to actually get them comfortable and provide opportunities where they we talk about challenge by choice or your challenge, your choice. And so the games that we start with are to exemplify that we mean this. This is where your
right.
choice is. These are games that if you chose not to move, that's fine. That's okay. And I'm gonna also ask you why, and where would you be motivated to do the next challenge? If this is where you were in this game, the next challenge is this. If you choose to take it, and why they would, and build that internal why of why they would take on that challenge,
Yeah.
and building trust with them that you really are going to support them setting boundaries, in kind of navigating, and that it's okay, their choices and how they proceed through the activities and finding their role, and then warming up to actually taking a bigger risk that they never thought that they were going to take.
Yeah. And the dynamics of comfort zones, like you do not learn in your growth zone.
Right.
That's where stress is happening. That's where, you can't necessarily assimilate information. So as a facilitator, it's almost like breathing. You lead them out there. And
Yeah.
again, most people don't go outside their comfort zone on purpose. Even
Yeah.
adventure people will say, no, I love it. No, put them in a mall at Christmas time. They're outside their comfort zone in a whole different way.
Right.
We don't go there, but if we trust the facilitator, we'll look in our rearview mirror and go, oh no, I'm outside my comfort zone. That's where the trust of the facilitator needs to be. Then they have to trust you to bring them back to their comfort zone where they can reflect.
Yes.
And
like
that's where
that,
it's like breathing.
Right. I like that. And this is why I like talking to you, because every time I have a conversation, it does develop that concept of, do you learn in your growth? Do you grow in your growth zone or not? And depending on how we articulate that, I like that you need to be back in your comfort zone to reflect. I do kind of believe that the growing happens when you're learning something new, which is naturally outside your comfort zone, in that growth zone. But I understand that when there's growth and you don't know what's happening, you can't take in the information. So there isn't learning when you're in that kind of confused, trying to absorb state, and having patience with that. And I think that that's a facilitation skill that is, some people get it pretty fast. And I think that's a late learned facilitation skill to be able to try on other people and be present with them and recognize that they're still taking in a lot of information and you're putting them in situations that you've done a million times. So it's like, duh.
Yeah. Well, and
Like,
that's,
why is
so it's, I think about when I coached football and wrestling. And so you do
yeah,
weight training
yeah,
and you do not develop muscle when you're lifting weights or when you're working out. It's in
right.
the recovery zone
Yep.
when your muscles are being repaired, and that's when they grow. As a matter of fact, and there's another parallel here, when you're working out, you're actually tearing down muscle. And
Yes.
when it's reconstructed, it's in a bigger state. I think when you're in your growth zone,
Yeah.
you're tearing down old ways of knowing and being,
Yes.
and they
Yes.
can't be reconstructed until you're in a comfort zone.
Yes. Yeah, I love that metaphor. And exactly.
Yeah.
So having compassion with self, and that, and building awareness of self and making that okay, I think is a huge trust thing. And that's like a passion of mine in doing, like, helping people play again, but also then having that play as the entry point if they choose to reflect and interrupt those patterns, or have, again, build compassion with self that I'm doing this and I might know that that's not how I want to show up, but this is why, and not it be an excuse to continue that pattern, but um have empathy for it. And then, like, of course, who would want to, step in the middle of a circle when you've seen somebody be stuck there for, you know 10 minutes, that's really not 10 minutes, it's probably
Right.
30
It
seconds and it feels like
feels
10
like
minutes,
forever.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be there, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I remember
um
I was doing the machine thing with a group of it was either a football team or a volleyball team, college age.
yeah, yeah,
And it was men's. And very first time I say, okay, repetitive motion and sound. And this, young guy gets out there and starts cranking out push-ups. Huh, huh. And nobody stepped in. And he just kept on doing push-ups and then finally had to take a knee. And I stepped back and said, okay, look what happened. You left him hanging. Who's going to
right,
step in and help him out? But yeah,
right.
it's that kind of thing that first of all, he gets smarter about what how he sets himself up. But then everybody else sees um how how their non-support impacts everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So I'm big on everybody's got an origin story, just like a superhero.
um
And I'm curious, how did you get to where you're at right now in doing all this
yeah.
kind of stuff? What's your journey?
I had shared with you earlier, I went to school for science. I wanted to be an athletic trainer or a physical therapist. I was
I
in the
was looking
days
at,
of
I did biology because I thought I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon because I had visited one so often in high school.
I I was a Title IX baby and got to do, all four sports before you have to specialize now, and I loved athletics. And so yeah, that was the area that I wanted to be. During college, I was a certified nurse aide at a local nursing home, did the athletic training thing, graduated with a biology degree. But my senior year, I got involved with Special Olympics a little bit, and a University of Iowa professor, Ken Mobley, I connected with him, and he's what took me in the direction of therapeutic recreation. So I went to Iowa and got my master's. And when I was at Iowa, connected with a ropes course, their challenge course, and I met some incredible people there who work for an organization called United Action for Youth. And that, like, there are so many people there. Jim Swaim was the director there, and he founded the organization, which is now over 50 years old, as a conscientious objector to the war, and had a lot of influence from Native American culture of you don't own anything, and wanting to be as generous as you can be with share everything and just ripple effect. And other people in that organization, there was an art therapist named Diane Tonkin. Rick Spear was a youth development specialist. They also worked on the challenge course, and I could keep going with names of people that in that organization which was arts and music based and recreation based. We had an incredible culture for creating meaning, connecting with youth where they are, and doing kind of wraparound, again, sharing and having shared experiences with colleagues, coworkers, and just developing that culture that we learned a lot in that time. So that's a huge area of my background. I spent up 13 years in Iowa City, and then from there left and had kids and spent about 9 years raising my kids and learning firsthand, being on the parent side.
Isn't that crazy how like, because I spent a lot of time working with youth and kids
Yeah.
as a young adult and
Yep.
talking with parents and going, I know this and this, all this kind of stuff. But as soon
Right.
as I
And
had,
then you have
like my
kids.
brain fell out with my own kid.
Right. Yes. And now I'm on the other side. I'm like, wow, there is so much to understand about, again, the way we want to show up. There are grand ideas of what kind of parent we're going to be. And then, and then you're in the thick of it and like, man, I am not showing up in the way that I
Here's the
want to.
iPad.
Right. Right. And being really like digging deep on the whys, of what's important and where are you rule bound. I mean, that's the other reason I love challenge course programming and problem solving and such, because there isn't one right answer exactly outside of those core things of, are you a good human, and are you being, and are you like, what are the blind spots? What are the unconscious biases that we have? And those, I think, are more easily, like, those are the aha moments that I've experienced more through play. Again, when you're not vested about the content. And so, oh, and the other thing that I really kind of grew up with United Action for Youth and Jim Swaim, Rick Spear, Diane Tonkin is, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose it now, is this, oh my gosh, I just lost what I wanted to say. But what I was talking about is not having one right way of doing something. And I know it's in that vein, but I think that's really, really important to be able to explore and find where how different viewpoints, and really being open to that we might use the same words in the English language, potentially, if we speak English, but we have different meaning behind those words. And I just think there's a lot of opportunity to discover the difference of meaning for how we're communicating and how that so greatly impacts
Yeah. I would
understanding.
talk about the beginner's mindset or mentality.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't know everything that's going on here, so let me assume best intent and step in humbly.
Yes.
Well, and
Yeah.
then Carol Dweck comes out with mindset stuff. But
Yeah.
essentially, it's that same thing of having this growth mindset or beginner's mentality. And I used to joke around, you know what? Experts step into a situation and look for things that confirm their expertise.
Yes.
Beginners
Yep.
step
Yes.
in, know they don't know it all, and
Right.
look for the things they don't know.
Right. Which is the other reason I love talking to you. Because, I mean, you have allowed me to be, I am somebody who processes out loud for better or worse. And I am actually, when we're recording things, I'm like, remember, Janie, this is recorded. Because I do say things with my genuine goal of like, I need to understand this and uncover or like work through what my biases are. Because in my mind, I know that what I'm thinking isn't, not, I'm trying to think of the words, like there's politically correct. So maybe it's at that moment in time, it's not politically correct, but I'm like, but I'm wrestling with, and these are my judgments. These are like, where am I uncomfortable with this? And why is this important? And I think over our span, sorry, I've encountered a lot of those things that I didn't think I would encounter. I grew up pretty liberal, and and going through this process and I think a lot of my origin story has to do with like, I grew up very liberal. I had a mom who was very liberal. I took on her why, like her belief system, but without a full knowledge of why. And so I've felt myself become more conservative, but more in the aspect of I need to challenge why I have the viewpoint that I have and really see it from a conservative viewpoint and like and really clean up those things and why I believe them and if they still hold. And I do
Yeah.
think, and again, in this political environment, I think that's a really important thing is where does it hold up and where does it not? And not from a place of fear, but a place of like curiosity. And
Yeah.
that takes
And
a
when I
lot
worked with college students, I worked on
of,
college campuses for a while. We talked about shipwreck and what
yeah,
happens when high school students enter college and they don't realize that they've adopted, even though they might have rebelled with their parents, they've adopted a lot of their
yeah,
construct. And
yep,
so when they get on campus and start to hear all these varying thought pattern, it doesn't matter if you were conservative growing up or liberal growing up, you now have to claim your own knowledge. And
yes,
you
yep,
do that by working it out. And I joke around that I don't know what I'm thinking until after I say it.
yes,
And that's important. And the funny thing is I married a person. I'm really an introvert, but I have to process externally. My
yeah,
wife is an extrovert who processes internally. So we
right,
go to a movie, like a really deep, thoughtful movie, and I'm walking out like, hey, let's talk about this. You ready to talk? Let's talk. And she's like,
no,
and so we've had to understand how do we compromise on that? Because I want to process right away out loud. And she says, I don't know. I won't say anything until I know what I think.
yeah,
And I admire that a lot, but I can't function that way.
yeah. Yeah, there's definitely that I would call that a professional skill set that I don't think that I wouldn't say that that's great. And I am often self-deprecating. So what I'm gonna say is when I think out loud and you and I think out loud, that's not bad, but it is risky and
Yeah.
it can be risky.
Yeah.
Because I do try to preface things a lot. I really genuinely want to talk this out and I want to find
Yeah.
people that are willing to have those vulnerable conversations because I might be wrong, but talk to me about it because right now this is how I'm feeling. This is what my thought is, but I have this feeling somewhere that I'm still trying to pinpoint of it's not lining up yet. Um,
And that's what when I do stuff around emotional intelligence, we talk about social awareness. And I just empathy is part of that, but also we talk about organizational awareness and situational awareness.
yeah,
And one of the things I've had to learn is when not to process out loud or when to preface it with, um, I'm making a statement, but this is really a question.
yeah,
So I don't believe this yet, but I'm
yeah,
going to say it.
yeah,
And I've had, over with some painful feedback over the years, I'm learning how to manage that a little bit better and realize that, okay, um, when you're speaking to a group of 200 people up on the podium, not a time to work things out loud.
no, not there, not
Yeah.
there.
So
No, I love that.
tell me a little bit about, so you said that you were a four sport person in high school.
Yeah, in high
What?
school.
Yeah. Which ones?
Went to so I played soccer when there wasn't women's soccer teams. And actually into high school that became volleyball. Where I went to school, volleyball and soccer were the same season. Basketball, I got to play 6-on-6 and 5-on-5 basketball.
Yeah.
Six
Midwest, they still had women's rules for a long
they
time.
they did. I played in Kansas City in 5-on-5, and when I moved to Iowa, they were still playing 6-on-6. So that the last year of 6-on-6 was my senior year of high school.
That's like half the team stays on each side of the court, right?
Yep. So you're either a forward or you're a guard, but the guards are defense. So
Right.
you're either defense or offense, and you can only dribble twice and then have to stop and pass.
That's actually good. That to me, that's great discipline. That's
It really makes you, yeah, practice. Like Lisa Bluter, who's a University of Iowa coach, Caitlin Clark. She was a 6-on-6 player for in Iowa, and she has had an amazing record. She's an amazing coach, and I think she built discipline and recruited 6-on-6 players successfully to play that 5-on-5 basketball at the college level.
okay. So volleyball, basketball.
Did track and field, but more the field side than track. Softball. And then I went to college for volleyball, but ultimately played rugby.
Oh, nice.
So
My brother played a lot of rugby, but
yeah.
personally, I couldn't handle what they called the second half, which was what the party after the game.
Oh, right, right.
Cal Poly's rugby team was notorious for their second half. So I played in college. I started as a walk-on football, but
Yeah,
then like couldn't dedicate 8 hours a day and
yeah.
still like make my grades and stuff like that. So I switched to playing club lacrosse. I thought,
Okay,
hey, no pads and they give you a stick.
right.
So I played
You
that
don't
for a
have to do
year.
the contact. No,
But so
rugby was a huge impact on for me. That second half, I grew to love, and you had to figure out how to thread that needle because it was obviously included drinking, but it was the practice of a gentleman's sport where you are in competition and then afterwards you raise a glass to their team and come together and sing and have a shared experience.
yeah,
And sing and do all these traditions that can get out of hand.
yeah.
But
Well, and I
but
think
I
that was where, like, I love that aspect of it, but
yeah,
that was lost for the most part. You
it was
know,
for where you were for
yeah, the clubs that I was at, and really, I think it was like a California college club culture.
yeah,
The tournaments were just, bacchanals. They were,
yeah,
it was it was amazing what they did, and I
right,
just, that wasn't for me.
right.
And that's where I actually ended up. I stopped playing football, but I ended up going up and helping my old high school wrestling coach football and wrestling at a local high school. So that was kind of
Okay.
I got ushered out of thinking in terms of, I don't want to go an extra 6 years for medical school.
Yeah.
So I'll stay
That's right.
biology, teach and coach. And that was the path I was thinking.
Yeah. No, I
So
love
you ended up, you went and you started playing volleyball, but then you switched to rugby in
rugby
college.
for
How did that transfer into your, you said that you coach and ref. Do you do any sport that'll have you, or what's your?
I do love my dad was a referee. He's a veteran. He's a man of uniform. Um I grew up watching him. He was a college level referee for soccer. And
Hmm.
that was a big part of it. But two of my kids do play soccer and there's a high need for referees at this point, probably
Right.
across the country, because it is a tough people are not kind,
Yes.
and very competitive, not in a positive way. And so there was a need, and I love again, I love coaching. I've coached volleyball, basketball, a little bit of rugby on the side and soccer, but at the younger levels. And I've coached high school volleyball. Um, but I do love cheering and supporting anybody in sport, and I love learning rules of a game. So I decided to become a soccer referee in this last year and have enjoyed it. I need to find more time to do it, and because there's a high
Yeah.
need for
Yeah. So
referees.
how do you find your experience with coaching impacting how you do what you do with experiential learning,
Um,
and
I
vice versa? How do they interact?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I'm a big I figuring out the or sharing the why of everything is really important. And I think the doing the programming that we do with every rule that you present, what's the why behind it? Because all people are hearing is what you can't, like, rules are usually what you can't do. And and I think that when people connect to the why and you give them a why, you have way more success. And so then even with the way I coach and referee, being able to say, like, correct the thing, like throw-ins, it's very common to not
Feet.
keep your feet down on the ground. And if so if you talk with younger people and give them the why and what they're doing, like instead of just blowing the whistle and giving it to the other team, coach and instruct and help them figure. I don't know, I'm digressing a little bit, but the why is is the big aspect that connects my my work in youth development and experiential programming to how I coach.
Yeah.
Giving people, you know, they're doing technique. If I'm doing volleyball and they have an approach for a hit, what is it about the body mechanics of the why that is the technique? What does it do for your jump vertical? What does it do for your capacity to hit the ball hard? Like connecting all of those dots. And I just don't think that we give those things. And we underestimate youth a lot. There is scaffolding and there can be too much information at times, but I think that we err on the side of not giving enough information so that, and not in a way that you give them, you know, it's experiential education. So I'm not talking about telling them how to do it. It is genuinely the why and how important that why is, or why you would want to wear a seatbelt in a car. What like you know, why would you want to follow rules when sometimes you can get away with not following the rules and nothing happened?
Right. Well, I remember, so when I was coaching high school, I realized, and this is when I was also starting to do professional coaching.
Yeah,
And when you're in business, you may have 5% of your time where you can train and 95 where you have to perform.
yeah,
And in athletics, it's the opposite. You might be practicing 90% of the time with 10% performing in the games. And it
yeah,
becomes the question of, I separated off training happens at practice. That is where you are, you're teaching, you're giving feedback on mechanics,
yeah,
you're giving them the why.
yeah,
Coaching happens at the games in the midst of performance.
yeah,
And that's how I looked at when I was leading challenge course stuff. That
yeah,
is performance.
yep,
But, and so when you coach, you step alongside and you're asking clarifying questions. You're letting them do the thinking with being prompted by you coaching.
yep,
And so
yep.
that's how I used to worry about, I don't know, the whole strengths thing. I've never fully bought in. I realized I looked into
Oh,
the Clifton strength stuff,
great
and
finder.
and
Yeah,
they do talk about dealing with weaknesses or game, you know, whatever's going to be career stoppers. They talk about that, but nobody talks about that in the practice of using strengths and strength finder. And then I kept on going back and forth, and people would ask, so John, what do we focus on, strengths or weaknesses?
yeah,
And I was listening to, I think, I can't remember the name of the guy who total immersion swimming is a coach. He's a coach. And he
yeah,
talked about, okay, so when you're in a race and you're not good at kicking, stop kicking, just stroke. It's that practice where you learn how to do effective kicking that doesn't create drag.
okay,
So
right,
what that told me was, you know what? When you go watch films, focus on where you can learn. When you're in practice, work on that, but game plan to your strengths.
yeah.
So when you're performing, focus on your strengths and leveraging them. When you have the opportunity to
To
train, that's when
develop
you
it in the
focus on
practice,
feedback and working out on stuff.
right? No, I like that.
So
True.
that's my stance on that. And I like, I've gone through almost any of the different assessments you can think of, and
Right,
actually got a chance to get trained to deliver them.
right.
And now my stance is, hey, if you want to do an assessment, I'll steer you towards one. But ultimately, the best way to learn about your preferences or personality is do something and get feedback.
Hmm.
So take them to a ropes course, and if they want to learn about emotional intelligence, watch them and give them feedback. Give them the language that comes with those models, but give them feedback that's really behavior based. If you
Hmm.
want to learn about behavior preferences, talk about DISC, give them that language, but then let them go out so they
And
can
do,
find out exactly how they behave.
yeah,
So it's all those things are entryways into self-awareness.
yes, definitely.
So I'd like to wrap up our conversations here with talking about lightning round stuff.
Okay.
And it's like, don't stress out. It's basically like, this is perfect time for you to work it out loud.
Okay.
So I'll ask you a question and then just give me the first things that come to your mind. And don't worry about you. I'm not making you sign an agreement that this is a
Okay.
lifelong commitment to that answer.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So what is your favorite book or media to give as a gift? Like,
Um,
I know you probably have favorite books, but what do you tend to
right.
give?
Well, Braiding Sweetgrass is my favorite book. Um, she's out of New York.
Okay.
She Um, she is has Native American ties, and it's very much nature based and Native American based, and just completely lovely, amazing book to read and to listen to, because she speaks her native language in it.
Robin Wall
Yeah,
Kimmerer.
Robin Wall. Yeah, sorry, not even Barbara. Robin.
It works. Yeah.
Um, so that's my favorite, one of my favorite books. Mary Oliver is a favorite poet. And I would say that, like, gift wise, I think Mary Oliver poetry, short things, in case somebody is more of a listens to books rather than reads books.
Okay. Mary Oliver, huh?
Yep.
All right. So I used to ask the question, who are your heroes? But I found a lot of people can't name a hero, but they can name components of different people who they
Yes.
admire. So
Oh,
that
yeah.
you're going to construct a hero from some of your favorite people and their traits. What are they and who do they come from? Construct your hero.
Oh my gosh. And then this is going to challenge to, like, all of the people that I adore, and all the names, just like Robin, Robin's name went out of my face. So I did start with people that I worked with early on, Jim Swain. Oh, and I love that has that mindset. He loves to sing. He's an artist, like a musician, and has that heart of everything he has is to give away. And that is a great practice. Uh, Rick Spear, who I got to work with on the challenge course, and his ability to connect with young people, just as a gift of meeting them where they're at, and saying things that, like, lets somebody know that they are trying them on. And Diane Tonkin, art therapist, who is just so amazing at creating meaning through art, and doing it with people. And I would say, like, Mickey Hampton, Cody Josephson, Diane Tonkin, the three of them as a unit are all artists, and all great at using that as a medium to work with young people and friends, and doing it intentionally, not just as their work, but intentionally with friends. And so creating meaning, connecting with people, giving. And then in my later years, there's Adrienne Toe, who is someone I met recently, and she is just a good human. She is very present. She puts her phone away. Like all these behaviors that the way you want to be, and it's like, oh, can I do that? And she leads by practice. She's very intentional and just steadfast. So having that centeredness, I would say, coming back to a centeredness of being a good human, and living a good life. And then there are many people that I'm going to forget in this, because, like you said, I do take nuggets from everyone that I am exposed to. So I could keep going.
Well, and everybody else. We'll put that.
Yes, everybody else. There are nuggets.
So,
I work with
next question.
Yeah.
What is one thing you've rethought or changed your mind about recently?
Oh, ooh, this is a good one, because this gets into those areas of, like, thinking out loud, talking out loud. I don't know if I've necessarily changed my mind. This is something I'm still exploring, and that you'd use a phrase that I want to come back to that I cannot think of, but, like, I think situational awareness, and really having being present with what's happening. I am within this challenge, by your challenge, your choice. I work with a lot of people and work with young people who there's entry points for this, but there's a lot of potential entitlement to be comfortable, fear of making someone uncomfortable and the consequences that could come with that, and entitlement to be entertained, and all of these things that are putting dishonest boundaries. I like, they're not integrous in terms of I think they're excuses. And so I'm not necessarily worried about the work that I do when people keeping people physically safe. That is a huge concern. I've come into an era where I'm way more concerned about, are people going to be emotionally safe? And then, we could have the whole conversation of what is safe and of creating brave spaces for people to do brave things, because we can't judge when someone feels emotionally safe and other forms of safe.
Right.
And I can't define that for somebody else. So I have to create a space for somebody to want to be integrous with themselves, internally honest with themselves. And so that's where I say that, in what that honesty is. When we are doing hard things, what is something that we use as an excuse to not be vulnerable? And that being okay. And I think this is where I'm not certain of where I land, but I have this, I've had experiences where I'm like, I want to provide the space because it's your choice. And
Yeah.
how can I
Well, and
support you
that's where I struggle a
being
little bit
honest?
with the whole
So,
idea of emotional and psychological safety,
right,
because I cannot make you I cannot make you safe.
right,
Period.
right,
I can only create an environment where it's more likely you are going to be safe and yet still take risks. And that's a struggle. I mean, I could just duct tape you to a pole and you'll be totally safe. And the same
yeah,
thing goes with, we can create an environment that is like, you have all the cushions around psychological safety and nothing will happen. That's I think is a good place to be, wrestling with that, about what does that really look like? What does it mean? And
right,
understand that I think you hear a lot about physical safety and psychological safety. You brought up, and I love the fact, thinking about emotional safety,
mhm,
thinking about intellectual safety,
yeah,
thinking about spiritual safety, all those. Like I use a
right,
five area approach when I'm talking about a whole person. And we need to think about challenge and support in all those areas. And
yeah,
it is that balance that you take of, you want people to be able to take intellectual risk
yeah,
and not abandon their entire like mindset.
right,
And the
yeah.
same thing goes in all those areas.
I think that, I mean, content wise, the things that come up that address this area that I'm talking about is that we've moved away from using blindfolds. We've moved away, like I work with groups of people that are uncomfortable doing spider web because it involves lifting and involves
Mhm.
body image. And then I've also had somebody say that we don't call on students anymore in school settings because it might embarrass them. And all of those areas that I think we can do better, and there's reasons that those things have happened. I don't want to completely throw them out because of fear that somebody might be uncomfortable at some point. I think we can do better with our facilitation and be mindful and be present with people to then make those decisions. But those are like really helpful tools. And when it comes to maybe like spiderweb again, there's consent involved for sure. There is people saying yes or saying, and the option to say no to being lifted. Outside of that, like if we do away with like spiderweb, and not that we've done away with spiderweb, but say we don't even do that, we adapt the activity so much that that subject doesn't come up. I think it does a disservice because it's not like those things go away.
Yeah.
We just stop talking about them, and I think they fester even longer. And I think that's where, again, I don't know exactly the right answer. And I do think that, of course, choice is important, consent is important. Creating spaces where people can be heard and honored, that they set boundaries, and we don't, and we trust that that person is where they want to be, and we don't push in certain ways, and where do we push because we really believe in them, and that's different than like you have to do this, but like
Well,
here's an idea
I think it
that I
gets into like leadership
yeah,
and design people. They give up on the judgment of a facilitator and they make a rule.
yep,
And that's where we need to
yes,
train
yes, yeah,
facilitators to be aware, conscious, present,
Yep.
exercise great judgment on what they're watching. And
Right.
that's going to create that powerful program. But I totally get, as somebody used to run courses where
Yep.
I've got a
Where
bunch
you'd come
of,
up with the rule.
yeah, you okay, we're not doing spider web anymore because I just don't have the time to train you in the judgment you need to run it well.
Right.
So I get
See,
that.
this is why I like having the conversations with you, because that's the distinction and why you would do either.
Yeah, and it comes down, and this is where, okay, totally tangent, but related. So I was a scuba instructor.
Yeah.
And when I was learning how to scuba, I learned from all the different agencies, NAUI, PADI, and SSI. Then when it came time to be a dive leader, I looked at each of their philosophy of education. And by that time, NAUI was kind of folded into something else. But what PADI does is they develop their materials in such a strong way, really strong materials, and then force their instructors to walk through every aspect, and they have quality control through the quality of the materials.
Wow.
SSI trains their dive leaders all of the behind the scenes, all the foundational stuff to make sure you know everything, so that when you're instructor, they say, here's the material. They have to be able to do these things and do this. You get to choose how you do it. And that really has informed how I look when I'm designing courses or when I'm training, especially facilitators. Do they have all the underpinnings and the foundations to make the choices they're going to be able to make? Provide them with great materials and then trust them to make the good choices.
Right.
So, all right, last question. Who do you find yourself quoting most often? And it could be author, movie, leader, and it could be everything from Star Wars to
Or Chevy Chase.
yeah. Okay, Fletch.
What?
Excuse you, Fletch. Is that what you're talking about?
What? Say that again. I didn't.
Fletch.
Yes. Fletch is like the classic. I really miss the movies that have so many quotable. Even there's like, let's do a little slip slide, and oh, there's Fred. Won't he be surprised? Like, when they're doing the car chase and he goes around the semi. Like, I love Fletch.
Yes. I got to tell you, when I was working camps, there wasn't probably an hour that didn't go by where some Fletchism didn't sneak in.
Right. Which goes back to like the pieces that I love about people is I have an old friend that whatever situation, he had a movie quote that he could pull in. Like the ability to recall so many movies in so many situations.
Yeah, but not be able to recall like people's names or things like that. But man, give me an 80s sitcom and I can do it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Well, Janie, thank you so much for being willing to sit here and have this conversation and share so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. I appreciate you too a ton. I really am glad that we got this done.
Be present and kind as you do great things.